All right, so today we're going to talk about clinical trials. So this starts 304, which is the biotechnical research and development, or blah blah blah, whatever that career cluster was. There's a lot of PowerPoints for this section, but I think that this is the only one we're going to do. We might talk one about pharmaceutical production, but this is the big one. This is the one that I really want y'all to understand, and it will play into what's happening today with Corona and all that. So, clinical trials. You have guided notes for this. There might be a fill in here and there, and then there's a chart that I want you to do. But really, what I want you to do is just listen and understand this. So, and this is all America, okay? Every country does it differently. This is how we do clinical trials in America. So, the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration, is who has to approve our medicines before they can be sold to the public, right? So they approve drug and biologics, think like insulin, things like that. They look at food, medical devices like pacemakers, animal food, animal drugs. They also approve cosmetics and any radiation emitting products like cell phones and pagers. So the evaluation of pharmaceuticals is very, 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 very regulated. And when it says biopharmaceuticals, it just means living. So any drug that has something, think like insulin or certain even antibiotics are mold based and stuff like that. But it's highly regulated. Okay, it is super, 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 super regulated. The FDA is the strictest that I know of from any country as far as how many hoops we have to jump through and how long we have to test things and prove that it's safe before we can start selling it to the public. And this is called drug development. Lots of new steps. So first we have to do research and development in a lab, in like a petri dish type of deal. And then we start testing on animals. And the only way we can go to animal testing is if the lab went okay. So we can grow it in petri dishes and it says, okay, looks like it doesn't affect these cells that we're testing it on too badly. So we're like, all right, bring in the rats or bring in the monkeys, bring in the adorable little rabbits. This is preclinical because clinical means humans. So once we've gone to clinical drug trials, and you'll hear that term a lot, clinical means patients and not furry ones, unless, it's just a man with a lot of hair. So when we start testing in humans, we call that clinical trials. So this is a chart that shows you a little bit about how long it can take. So, but we'll talk about this again at the end. I don't want you to worry about it too much right now. So now we're going to go into the phases of the clinical trial. So clinical trials are human studies, and it first of all helps distinguish the drug's effect from other influences. So we make sure you're getting better, and we make sure you're getting better because of the drug, not because of anything else. So we have to have controls, and it has to be proven that, this is the only thing that we messed with, this drug, and that is linked to, it is not correlation, it is causation. This is what is making you better. And again, I just want to remind you, they have to be super duper, super duper tested even before they can move on to human testing. The R&D part takes a long time, and the animal part takes a long time as well. So this is the R&D part. This is where we're doing, look at the little lab things. We're coming up with all sorts of safety tests and stuff just in a lab. And then we move on to preclinical, and we test them on the mices. It helps establish, one of the things that the mices helps us establish is boundaries for safe use. So like dosages, we figure out what is just astronomically way too high and obviously going to be deadly. And we figure out like our ranges, how many milligrams, think of it that way. A lot of drug trials are stopped here. A lot of drug trials never go to clinical testing. They never go to testing on humans, because they're found to be so unsafe in animals that we cannot ethically justify testing them on humans. So if we've gone through the R&D development stage and we've gone through the preclinical, which is the mouse phase, it's not just mice, but that's how I think of it. Then we have to collect all that data, and we fill out this thing called an investigational new drug application. We submit it to the FDA, and the FDA looks at what happened in the lab in the petri dishes and what happened in preclinical in the animal trials, and they say whether or not it is okay for us to move on to clinical trials, to human trials. So let's say they said okay, and again, this has already taken years. Let's say they say okay, and now we move on to phase 1 of clinical trials. So clinical trials happen in different phases. There are at least 3 phases. The phase 1 is safety. So in phase 1 clinical trials, meaning human, clinical meaning human, we test it to see what it does to your body, safety wise. We are looking for dose range in effect with regard to safety and toxicity. It says not efficacy. That means we are not, let's say that this is a blood pressure pill, we are not actually in phase 1 looking at your blood pressure whatsoever. We are only looking at, does this pill kill you? Does it make you grow a second head? Did it make you have a stroke? We are looking for safety and when it builds up too much in your system. So how many milligrams won't clear out of your system within 24 hours by the time we're telling you to take another pill and then you overdose on it. So we are just looking at, will it kill you? Is it safe? We are not looking at, does it work for what we want it to work for? So phase 1 clinical trials are pretty small. It's only 20 to 80 people usually. And again, they are healthy. Almost everyone that we tested in for phase 1 doesn't actually have the problem that the drug is meant to treat. So let's say, again, let's just stick with a blood pressure pill. We're going to test it on 20 to 80 people who do not have blood pressure problems because we want to know, how does this affect a normal body? How does this deal with human cells, basically? Sometimes we will have sick patients, cancer patients, AIDS patients, things like that, sign up for these so that we can figure out the differences in that population as well. But usually phase 1, we just want healthy people. I know what you're thinking, or at least I hope I know what you're thinking. Why in the world would 20 to 80 people sign up to take a pill that they don't know whether it's safe when they don't even have a problem? Because we cannot pay them for this. That would be unethical. If we pay them, then they are encouraged to say that everything's fine so the drug trial continues, versus if we're not paying them, they'll go, oh, no, this is killing me. This is making me sick. This makes me puke 45 times a day. Then we can stop it. So my girlfriend works actually in clinical trials for chemo drugs. And I asked her one day, I was like, how do you get people to show up for phase 1 clinical trials? And she looked at me dead-faced and went, I have no idea, but they just keep coming. So I don't know, man. Maybe just people want to help out science or something. So first time we're looking at some hard numbers here. Phase 1 usually takes, look at this, guys, 9 to 18 months. So just shy of a year to a year and a half in phase 1, not even looking to see if it works, just looking to see if it's going to kill people, or the safety for their body. A lot of drugs are abandoned here. So if we're doing this and people are getting sick, then we have to stop. We cannot go on to the next phase. Just like if the rats all died, we could not go into clinical trials to begin with. All right, so let's say everything's fine. Everything was safe. We figured out, can't give more than this many milligrams than the usual person. Okay, well, then we'll go on to phase 2. So phase 2 is effectiveness. Let's see if it actually works. So this is still pretty small scaled. So it's not the 20 to 80. It's usually about 100 to 300 patients. Again, very well controlled. We're making sure that this pill is about the only thing that's different. And this is preliminary, meaning first round of safety and efficacy. So safety, we continue to test. We will test safety all throughout. We really care if it starts killing people or increasing people's risk for, stroke and cancer and stuff like that. But this is the first time that we're looking at, is it effective? Does it actually work? So if this is a blood pressure pill, we want these 100 to 300 people to actually have the disease or the condition. If it's a blood pressure pill, we want 100 to 300 people with high blood pressure. Because phase 2, we're going to actually see if it works. Does it actually, is it more effective than the other blood pressure pills out there? So some of the things we're looking at is dose response. Like, if we go up from 100 to 200 milligrams, does that actually help your blood pressure anymore? Or does that just start making you feel sick? Dosing schedule. So should we do this once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day? Stuff like that. So phase 1 took 9 to 18 months. Phase 2 usually takes 1 to 3 years. Just remember that this is all, we go through all of this with vaccines as well. Phase 1, like a year. Phase 2, 1 to 3 years. And again, we're going to continue testing everything. So we never stop. So like we were testing it in rats and we got approved to start testing it in humans. Okay, so now we're testing it in humans, but we continue to test it in the rats because now we can start collecting long-term data, because those rats have been on this medicine now for what, 4-5 years since they first started. So that's given us some long-term medicine. And again, if they're not useful, so just like in phase 1 when we were testing for safety, if it's not safe, it doesn't go on. In phase 2, we're seeing, does it help? If it doesn't help, it won't go on. But if it passed phase 1 because it's safe, and it passed phase 2 because it's safe, and we're getting data that says that it's helpful, it's effective, then we will go on to phase 3. Phase 3 we call extensive testing. So phase 3 is huge, basically. It's the most extensive and the most expensive to coordinate testing stage of a drug. It's still doing safety because we still care. We're still looking for efficacy, effectiveness. Is it actually treating? Now we're also going to fine tune our drug dosages, and we're going to have tons and tons of patients so that we have lots and lots of data. And this is where we're also going to try to include some extremes of ages and special populations and things like that. So again, hundreds to thousands of people who actually have the disease. And if you'll notice, we've added a diverse group. So in that phase 2, that 100 to, a few hundred people, they were probably all like middle-aged, reasonably healthy type of people. Now we're going to do every different race, every different age we can get, both genders, people with other diseases, people in liver failure or kidney failure, to see how it affects those patients. Every patient we can get. Though I will say that a lot of drugs are never tested on pregnant women because we can't say that's not ethical. If there's no reason that we have to test it, that they don't actually have to have that medicine, then we won't test it on them. And a lot don't get tested in pediatrics, again, because if we don't have to test it, we won't. Now, we're going to make comparisons between this new treatment and a placebo. This means like a sugar pill, nothing, to make sure that it's not just the fact that they're swallowing a pill that makes them better, because that actually works in a lot of people for a lot of different things, especially like pain and depression. And we're going to compare between the pill that we're testing and the standard treatment. So let's say everybody gets penicillin for this one type of bacterial infection. Okay, so we're going to test our new drug versus a placebo, and we're going to test our new drug versus a treatment, that penicillin, right? To make sure that, because if penicillin is better than our new drug, then why the crap are we going to put out our new drug? So we have to make sure that it's better than what we currently use. I will say that a placebo is only used if it's not required to treat it. So my example would be kind of bad because we would never give someone with a bacterial infection just a sugar pill and let the bacterial infection kill them. So think like maybe depression, something that's, probably not going to, mild depression, I'll say, probably not gonna kill you so much if we don't give you a pill. So we may give those people a placebo, and then another group has their normal depression medicine, and then a third group has ours. And we still need that third group to be tons and tons and tons of people so that we get lots of data. So this is huge. Phase 3 is huge. Understand safety, understand if it actually helps, and any adverse effects. This is why we're trying to test it on like super old people and obese people and skinny people and liver failure and kidney failure, because we want to know, is it going to hurt any weird small part of the population? This is how we find out a lot of times, like people in kidney failure or liver failure, we need to half the dose. We need to give them half as many milligrams as other people because they can't clear it out of their systems as quickly. And so they end up overdosing on the normal dose. And we figure all that type of stuff out in phase 3. There are a lot of medicines that are weight dependent. If you weigh less than a certain amount, then we half the dose, or age dependent. If you're like 75 or older, we half the dose. We figure out all that type of stuff in phase 3. Please note that this is another 2 to 5 years. So we've done all of that. Remember, we had to get approval to even start testing the drug. Well, now that we've gone through all this 10 years of testing, we have to fill out another new drug application with all of our data and submit it to the FDA so that they can read through it and approve it. All the information is in it, thousands and thousands of pages that we submit. The law is that the FDA has 60 days to decide whether or not they're going to send that new drug, like approve it and let it start being made and sent to pharmacies. However, this usually is lengthened considerably, and it's by mutual agreement because the FDA says, all right, well, we need a year. And if the drug company said, no, you can't have a year, then they'll just say, okay, denied. So if they need longer, the drug company kind of has to give them longer because otherwise they won't approve it. Don't worry about that. And then even if once they approve it and we start sending it to mass production and selling it in, Walgreens and prescribing it by doctors or whatever, a lot of times we'll continue to do phase 4. It's after it's already gone to market. We'll continue to study things for long term. Remember how we kept testing in the rats? Well, we're going to keep testing in people to make sure that people 10 years down the road don't start showing up with some really weird side effects or adverse reactions. And sometimes this will they'll start testing different forms like sustained release. All those pills you see that are like 24-hour sinus pills or whatever that continue to break down in your system over long periods of time. They'll start doing weird forms of the drug like that and testing it. That's that sustained release, and or we can start testing for different indications. So, for instance, Viagra, the pill that we usually think of as being used for erectile dysfunction, was originally intended for pulmonary hypertension for people who had basically a heart problem that had caused a lung problem, and all the blood was backing up in their lungs. We started testing it for pulmonary hypertension and found out, oh, these men are having the side effect that they're having erections when they used to not be able to. And so, well, now let's study that. So that happens sometimes. We have to keep watch on it even after it goes to market and make sure that no one's complaining of any weird side effects. Anytime anyone has a side effect, we have to write that down as a possible side effect. That's why for every drug you hear that may cause, and then they start talking for like 14 minutes, headache, sinus pressure, blah, 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 including death. Because any side effect that came up during the trial, even if it really had nothing to do with the drug, we can't prove that it didn't. So they have to put that on the warning list. So let's look at this timetable. And I don't want y'all to get too worried because I know that I'm saying that all the vaccines and stuff have to follow all these same sharing rules. But just wait. So test tube to patient. R&D and preclinical. So that means studying in the lab in the test tube and then studying in the mice. So these two, R&D and preclinical, usually average 3.5 years before we even go to clinical. So 3.5 years we've tested a drug before the first person takes that pill. Phase 1, which is just the safety phase with healthy people, very small, average is about a year. Phase 2 is the slightly larger group and they actually have the disease, but otherwise they tend to be pretty healthy. Average of 2 years. Phase 3, average of 3 years. So this is the mass extensive testing with thousands of patients. Then the NDA evaluation, remember I told you, what was it, like 60 days or something that they have? Yeah, they usually take 2.5 years to study it and approve it. So altogether, this is 12 years. So from the time a scientist says, hey, I have day one started testing this drug to the time that your doctor can prescribe it is 12 years. Medicines that are coming out today were first being tested in what, 2008? I mean, it's insane. It takes over a decade usually for medicines to come to market. So here's the thing though. There is something called, I think it's called expedited. If a medicine is shown to just blow the other medicines out of the water and the FDA can say, oh my God, look at this. It is so much better. Early on here in phase 2 or so, then sometimes the FDA will expedite that medicine and we will send it to market much, much quicker. If you can show that like it's basically unethical to not go ahead and send this medicine to market because people are dying and don't need to be, then the FDA will speed this up. So the fastest I've ever heard of anything going to market is like a year to a year and a half. And just know that those medicines haven't been well studied. So yeah, maybe they cure whatever, but we don't have 10 years of data saying they're not going to kill you down the road as well. So that's the trade-off for those expedited medicines and vaccines. All right, guys, I miss y'all so much. I'm here if you need me. Office hours, Remind app, emails, whatever. Holla at me. Bye, guys.